and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the insipid and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. I trust that everyone survived Memorial Day weekend. And, you know, I saw a post when I got back yesterday. I went to the mountains over the 3-day weekend just to kind of get away and spend some time with family. But I noticed over the weekend when I got back a post on X, and it was a picture, and it had a group of soldiers saluting, and above it said Veterans Day with an arrow. And then there was a picture of Arlington National Cemetery, and that said Memorial Day with an arrow. And the reason why I want to start out here is I think it's worth a little bit of reflection, at the very least, to say that this beautiful country that we live in, this amazing American experiment, is here for us only because of those people who decided to give of themselves for the service of others. I found a video last night of a World War II veteran at the National Mall yesterday, Memorial Day. He's 98 years old. Ken, go ahead and play that video. It is World War II vet. Go ahead and play
it. Tell your friends about this place. Tell your friends about the fact that you stood in the rain to hear us today. Tell the friends about your dedication. And then tell them about us. Tell them about veterans and say to them, we gave up our yesterdays for your tomorrows. And if they say to you then, who did you hear speak these words? Tell them. It was a 16-year-old boy in the hearts and mind and body of a 98-year-old veteran of World War II.
That is precisely what we should be thinking about yesterday. And, you know, I mean, it's I think it's important that we sit back, we just take a minute to just understand why it is that we're able to do the things that we can do. Why we can have this program, why you can walk around, why you have the freedom of speech, why you have the right to protect yourself and your family, the right to participate in a political system, which is what this program is all about. I've got one more video for you that I want to play. This is Reagan at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, where they're entombing a soldier from the Vietnam War. And, you know, there aren't too many World War II veterans around. By the way, if you ever get a chance to sit down and talk with a World War II veteran, you should definitely take advantage of that. But Vietnam veterans are, I mean, the next group that you should really take a chance to, if you get a chance, sit down and talk with one. Just listen to their experiences. But here's Reagan at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, dedicating the internment of a veteran of the Vietnam War.
Our dedication to their cause must be strengthened with these events today. We write no last chapters. We close no books. We put away no final memories. An end to America's involvement in Vietnam cannot come before we have achieved the fullest possible accounting of those missing in action. This can only happen when their families know with certainty that this nation discharged her duty to those who served nobly and well. Today, a united people call upon Hanoi with one voice. Heal the sorest wound of this conflict. Return our sons to America. End the grief of those who are innocent and undeserving of any retribution. The unknown soldier who is returned to us today and whom we lay to rest is symbolic of all our missing sons. And we will present him with the Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration that we can bestow. About him, we may well wonder, as others have. As a child, did he play on some street in a great American city? Or did he work beside his father on a farm out in America's heartland? Did he marry? Did he have children? Did he look expectantly to return to a bride? We'll never know the answers to these questions about his life. We do know, though, why he died. He saw the horrors of war, but bravely faced them, certain his own cause and his country's cause was a noble one, that he was fighting for human dignity, for free men everywhere. Today, we pause to embrace him and all who served us so well in a war whose end offered no parades, no flags, and so little thanks. We can be worthy of the values and ideals for which our sons sacrificed, worthy of their courage in the face of a fear that few of us will ever experience, by honoring their commitment and devotion to duty and country. Many veterans of Vietnam still serve in the armed forces, work in our offices, on our farms, and in our factories. Most have kept their experiences private, but most have been strengthened by their call to duty. A grateful nation opens her heart today in gratitude for their sacrifice, for their courage, and for their noble service. Let us, if we must, debate the lessons learned at some other time. Today, we simply say with pride, thank you, dear son. May God cradle you in his loving arms.
That is exactly the point. We can debate the causes, the reasons behind why we go to war. We can debate those at some other time, but we should all take a moment just to reflect. You don't have to do it, just one day a year or 2 days a year. You really should take some time to learn about what it took to make this great country. And so I hope that you did that yesterday. And if you didn't, that's why I thought we'd play a couple of videos this morning. So that being said, let's move on with the program. Now, there was a lot of stuff in the media about our new Attorney General, or not Attorney General, but U.S. Attorney from Wyoming, Darren Smith, how he scheduled, impaneled a grand jury, and then he said some bad stuff to him. And, there was a judge that dismissed all of those indictments with what he said without prejudice, which means that the indictments could be filed again. Well, since that time, Darren Smith has been confirmed as the U.S. Attorney for the state of Wyoming, and he's issued new indictments. And this one is from, let's see here. I think this is from the Wyoming Turkey Vulture. Clean slate grand jury issues new indictments. And I quote, A new federal grand jury convened last week and re-indicted a slew of felony defendants who had their original cases dismissed momentarily after alleged misconduct on the part of U.S. Attorney for the District of Wyoming, Darren Smith. According to a filing last week by Wyoming's 3 federal judges, a new grand jury convened on May 18th, and by late on May 20th, all 9 defendants' cases had been refiled following the grand jury's indictments. Now, I think it's important to understand why the left was going after Darren Smith. Because he's a conservative, and the media is not. But you notice they ginned up a whole bunch of articles, and it was, oh, how terrible is Darren Smith? He said these horrible things. And basically the only thing he said is, this group of people, they're a bunch of murderers. But, of course, you can't tell a grand jury that, because the whole point of a grand jury is for them to figure out for themselves whether or not these people should stand trial for the crimes of which they've been accused. Anyway, you can't do that in a grand jury, and those charges were dismissed. Now, nobody really in the media thought that all 9 of these really bad people, I can say that they're really bad people, it's just the U.S. Attorney can't. But there was never any doubt that these 9 people were actually going to be indicted and that they would stand trial. What you saw last week or the week before was only a formality. And all of the controversy that the media stirred up was just an attempt to convince the members of the Senate not to confirm him, of which you could see that didn't really work too well. The charges came following a flurry of federal court action in recent days. First, defense attorneys filed motions for dismissal on behalf of a list of defendants who had been indicted by the grand jury in March, alleging that Smith had made prejudicial remarks to them outside of the bounds of law. On Friday, May 15th, Chief Justice Judge Kelly Rankin and Judge Alan Johnson and U.S. District Judge Scott Skavdal dismissed 9 felony cases over the allegations, including a first-degree murder indictment. So right there is where you saw the media explode and say how terrible of a person Darren Smith is. And none of them stopped for even a moment to say, well, what does the term without prejudice mean? None of them said in their articles, well, this is going to be refiled and this is really a formality. Rather, what you heard from the mainstream media was that, oh, look at all of these bad people that are walking free. But you see, much of the drive-by media only exists to gin up controversy. The only reason why they're there is to push a political narrative. And I think that you could pretty much, I hesitate to paint with such a broad brush. And, if you've ever done any painting in your house, you know how hard it is to handle a big, huge brush that's meant for painting your fence. But in this case, I think it's absolutely appropriate. The left owns the media in Wyoming. And so if you're a conservative, well, then it's open season on you. I mean, all you got to do is ask Agent 29, and he'll tell you how many great articles have been printed about him in the pages of the Sheridan Press. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's not that many. In fact, they very rarely ever call him to do an interview, even though he's the vice chair of appropriations. But the point here is this is, and I hate to do this about the story I'm leading with, but this is a non-story. It was a non-story when it began, and it's still a non-story, except, of course, that Darren Smith has indicted 9 really terrible people for some really, really bad crimes. Well, so then the article goes into a full page. Yeah, I mean, I guess, you count the 3 paragraphs there. A full page talking about all of the misconduct claims. And then, right at the very end, there's 2 short paragraphs that say judges decline discipline. And I quote, Wyoming's federal judges declined all of the defense's requests to move the cases out of Wyoming, to dismiss them with prejudice, and to forward Smith to the Department of Justice for disciplinary proceedings. Quote, the court is keenly aware of its obligations under the Code of Judicial Conduct and will take appropriate action as it deems necessary to prevent harm to those affected with any misconduct and to prevent any recurrence. The judges wrote, this court believes the remedy imposed for the misconduct that occurred is sufficient and appropriate. Defendant's suggestion otherwise is supported by neither the facts nor the law. So that is the point that you should be getting out of all of this, that the stories that were written about Darren Smith were not supported by the facts, nor were they really supported by the law. But you'll notice many of them were printed anyway. And why is it that that the turkey vulture waited until the very last two paragraphs of the article to tell you that, hey, nothing's going to happen to him? It's called burying the lead. It's when you don't really want to admit what's going on, so you insert it way down in the bottom of the article where most people don't read it. And so that is exactly the point of this, is that you can't really trust anything that the mainstream media tells you. And it's not just me saying it. All you got to do is look at their articles. Look at what they do. Look at what they say. And when just about all of them, quote unquote, bury the lead in just about every piece, it's pretty obvious what they're doing. I mean, there's no question about it in my mind. Let's see here. What else we got? All right, here's a good one from Breitbart. And this is I think really good news, because again, if you listen to anything that's been in really any of the media, even on Fox News, there's been a lot of reporting about how the Republicans are going to lose the Senate. The first thing I would always caution in any of these things is don't pay attention to the polls. Generally speaking, the polls are wrong, and the only place that they're really useful is to get you in the ballpark. It's kind of like sighting a gun in. So you get a new gun and you put a new scope on it. And even if you're really good at bore sighting, I know a couple of bore sighting is when you, they make this cool little laser that you put down the barrel and you line up the scope with it. I know some guys that are pretty good at that, and most of the time they're pretty well on. But if you don't have that little tool, you put the scope on your rifle and you go to the range. And then the very first thing you do is you set up a target really close at like 50 yards, and you just try to get the gun on paper. So you take a shot, and you're probably going to see the dust kick up over to the right, and you're going to have to really adjust the scope. And then once
that depends on who's shooting.
Well, no, we're talking about sighting it in.
I know.
It's. But anyway, the first thing you do is you try to get it on paper. And after that, then you go to 100 yards and you really try to dial it in. That's what polls are useful for, getting you on the paper. It's not an exact science, though I heard on the way over to the studio this morning, and I think they were talking about Texas. Well, Ken Paxton is ahead of Tallarico by so many points. Okay, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But I think that we've had enough experience with polling that you really shouldn't take it as the God's gospel truth in any way. And if you do, you're going to end up saying that Hillary Clinton is going to be the president when, in fact, it's Donald Trump.
Well, polls today are primarily used to shape opinion. They're used to discourage people. They're used to demoralize. That's what a poll is for today, the way that they're used. It has nothing to do with how people really feel.
Well, yeah. Now, there are professional polling organizations that, they pride themselves on getting it right. And in fact, when they publish the results, you'll see, the margin of error, and it's usually, 2%, 3%. But a lot of time is spent in crafting the questions and making sure that they're unbiased so that you get the true data out of the poll. But more often than not, when you see these online polls, do you think that we should kill little puppies? Well, no, of course not. Now, I'm being facetious, but if you look at a lot of the polling questions the Better Wyoming poll is a great example. How terrible is the Freedom Caucus? Just a little bit terrible, really bad, or should we roll out the guillotine for them? I mean, that's what it is.
It probably ought to be required when you post a poll to post who's paying for it, like we have to do on our propaganda.
Well, you should, and most people do, right? And you don't hear about this until the poll comes out, but you'll always hear it's a Monmouth poll, or it's a Fox News poll, or... but that tells you... Yeah,
but who's paying for it? Who's asking for the poll? Who's driving it?
Right, okay. So when candidates do it, I see what you're getting at. When candidates have polling done, they do two sets. One, you'll have internal polling, which tells the candidate, okay, this is where you're really at. And then you have public polls that you would release. And, generally speaking, the people that release it end up being the folks that pay for it, but not always. My favorite one, the poll, the Medicaid expansion poll that K.O. Case uses all the time, where he says that, 70% of Wyoming is in favor of Medicaid expansion. Well, if you actually look at the poll, they only talk to 500 people, and when you examine the questions, they're horribly biased. And so, any data that you get out of it is tilted intentionally in most cases. But polling, yeah, take it for what it's worth. However, sometimes we get good news out of polling. And I quote from Breitbart, new nonpartisan analysis. Okay, maybe that's the first indication that we should give it a little bit more scrutiny. But nonpartisan analysis forecasts that Democrats will fail to retake the U.S. Senate in the midterms. Now, this is actually kind of a big headline because most of the time in the midterm elections, you just generally assume that the party in power is going to lose one, if not both, houses of Congress. But not according to this poll. Here's what the piece says. A nonpartisan analysis forecasts that Democrats will fail to retake the U.S. Senate majority in the midterms, despite the establishment narrative that Republicans could lose in the upper chamber. An Inside Elections analysis recently provided an updated rating, with the tally forecasting Republicans with 52 seats, Democrats with 45 seats, and 3 toss-ups. So those 3 toss-ups, what that sentence means is that there's no indication that they could go either way. And so that you could consider that your margin of error. More specifically, the analysis showed that Maine and Ohio are tilting in the GOP's direction. And so that crazy man, Graham Plattner, the Nazi supporter with the Nazi tattoo, yeah, so he's actually looks like he's not going to pull it off in Maine. Here's what they say. In Maine, for example, Senate candidate Graham Plattner, the left's presumptive nominee, hoping to oust Senator Susan Collins, has continued to go down in flames, with resurfaced Reddit posts showcasing mocking remarks that he has made. In one, the 41-year-old Democrat mocked an American soldier who was shot 4 times in Afghanistan, writing, quote, "Dumb MFer didn't deserve to live." In another unearthed social media post, Plattner admitted to, I'm not even going to read that sentence. The forecast also looked at swing states, including Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia, deeming all 3 of them toss-ups. In Georgia, Republican candidates are battling it out to take Senator Jon Ossoff for his seat. Republican Senate candidate Derek Dooley has come under fire for suggesting that he supports allowing illegal migrants, is what the article says, to stay in the United States, calling himself very sensitive to both sides of the issue. His primary challenger, Representative Mike Collins of Georgia, has a distinctly different anti-amnesty view and has made itself abundantly clear. So, in other words, the guy who has the same immigration policy as Jon Ossoff shouldn't be who we replace Jon Ossoff with, Collins remarked. So, in other words, in a lot of these races, you have candidates that are, I would say that they're pretty radical, that they're way off to the left. And Graham Plattner absolutely qualifies. This Dooley fellow, he is absolutely on the extreme left, and then you have a pretty solid Republican. Now, if you take that view and kind of lay it over what we're seeing in Wyoming, though they never come out and say it, and again, from what we talked about in the beginning, the media in Wyoming certainly isn't going to tell you about this, but you really do have the same phenomenon going on. You have a solid conservative candidate, and then you really have somebody who's way off to the left challenging them. And if you look across the state, you can see that in a lot of different races. But of course, they all claim to be Republican, which, I mean, it's the game. They try to fix the game from the very beginning. So anyway, what's happening nationally really is, you could see the same thing happening in Wyoming, though it's a little bit harder to figure out, simply because everybody claims to be a Republican. And, I saw a campaign sign over, when I got back, Ken, and it was blue, and it had the word forward on it. There's only one group of people that use that word
All
in that context.
All it was missing was a fist.
Yeah. Well, this one has a buffalo on it, but, all you got to do is pay attention to the messaging, pay attention to what you're seeing and what you're reading, and you can figure out who these people are. And I mean, that's why I want to get as many of them on the program as I can so we can find out who these folks are. I mean, in the span of a 20, 30-minute interview, you're going to find out the truth about somebody. So anyway, that's why I'm putting in such an effort to to get as many interviews done. After the break, I'll tell you, we've got a couple of them already set up for this week, and we'll talk about it when we come back.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The 2 guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Tuesday. I'm David Iverson, Wyoming's big voice on the right. And, you know, you asked me, Ken, to rerun the numbers as to how often I'm almost always right. It didn't really change all that much. So it's still 99.987% of the time. Almost, I mean, you may as well just say I'm almost always right.
Like, it kind of relates to the polls, in my view, that
mine's
you look
accurate.
at who's running the numbers, and you got to...
Hey, now, I'll give it. Here's exactly how I determine it.
I know, you've explained it.
Well, you just don't buy it. So here's how I feel.
I am a skeptic at heart.
No, curmudgeon, maybe. Grouchy curmudgeon sometimes.
That part, yeah.
That part is absolutely true. But here's how I determine those numbers. So I think that retractions, you should issue them when they're appropriate. And let me define that, right? If you get something wrong and you figure it out, you the first thing you should do is you should lead with it, and you just say, hey, I told you this the other day. It was wrong. Here's the right answer. I'll do better in the future. But, sometimes there are things that are more, I guess you would call them, I don't know, they're not definite. See, I'm struggling with words this morning. But anyway, they're not set in stone. It's not right or wrong. It's not black and white. But it's a matter of opinion. Okay, well, opinion is just that, and everybody's got one, and they're all worth about the same, almost always worth about the same. But so if I report on something and somebody says, hey, Dave, you didn't get that quite right, let me show it to you. Okay, you prove it to me that I got it wrong, and then we'll talk about it. So if I issue a retraction, I take the total number of retractions that I've had to do, which is not that many. That number's 10 now in 6 years. It was 9 for a really long time, but now it's 10. And so I just figure I've published this many. And, okay, so I figured the numbers off of the podcast numbers. Okay, if we were to include Cowboy State Politics Live, that number would be 99.9999999%. Because we do way more.
Yeah, but then you'd have to throw mine in there. And so.
Then my number would go way down.
Well, yeah. So in the interest of full disclosure, it was pointed out to me by a friend over the weekend that I actually misspoke myself in a recent conversation.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we were talking about the ESAs, and I used the term universal preschool. And that's not exactly what is in there. I generally, when I talk about why I didn't like the ESAs, that's where it's leading us. As soon as you make provision for some people to get it, well, then now it's got to be expanded. It's got.
Well, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Proverbial camel's nose through the door. So, yeah, I'll offer that retraction and say I shouldn't have used the word universal in that case, or I should have prefaced it by saying this is where we're headed.
So you weren't as accurate as you could have been.
Yeah.
And
I'm still right.
Yeah, I mean, you're still correct. It's just not.
I'm almost never wrong. I just sometimes am not as accurate.
Well, I thought I made a mistake once, but I was wrong.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Anyway, so back to here's how I figure the numbers. So I take the total number of podcasts that I've published, and it's closing in on 1,050. I subtract the total number of retractions and then divide by the total. And in this case, it ends up like 99.987%. Of the time. So there's how I figure the numbers. All right, Ken. So you're a little grouchy. So I'll give you a choice here where we go next. So we can either.
I was thinking we go to the mountain.
Well, no, we can't do that. The show must go on.
See, I don't really have a choice.
Well, you do so. You have a choice between these two things.
Okay.
So I'm defining down your options. So we can either talk about Secretary Gray. And his 15 more election bills. Mm-hmm. Or we can prove that Gail Simmons is so full of crap it's coming out of her ears, and we've got sound bites to prove it. This might be fun.
I can see how you're pushing me.
I am.
It's sometimes
this is not an unbiased poll. And it is my program, so I'm going to make the choice anyway. But I thought I'd let you weigh in on it.
Well, you go ahead and do it.
Why don't you just play along? All right, fine. So we'll go with Gail Simmons.
Shocked.
Shocked and amazed. So she has her new piece in the Cow Pie is entitled "Take Back the GOP from the Inside and Not the Outside." Okay, so if you actually believe that you need to take back the GOP, that's one thing. But first...
Take it back from whom?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where I was going. Who are you taking it back from? Are you taking it back from the Republicans? And in which case, you want Democrats to control it? Or, I don't know. I guess words mean things here. And unfortunately, Gail is really not on top of things in this one.
When you're recruiting Democrats to help take back the Republican Party, there's
something wrong with
fundamentally, there's an issue.
So the candidates that Gail Simmons supports, almost across the board, end up voting more with the Democrats than they do with the Republicans. And the reason I phrase it that way is there's 93 people in the Wyoming legislature, And, a good number of them vote with the Democrat Party over 60% of the time. Now, there's a pretty good chunk that vote with the Democrats 80% of the time. Eric Barlow. And so the reason I say most of the time is it gives a little bit of wiggle room there, but still conveys the accurate point.
Yeah. There's another factor in the wiggle room, as you say, vote with the Republicans. Well, Doug counts all the Republicans.
Yes.
Whether they actually are or not. So if you actually know who the conservatives are, who are voting in accordance with the party platform, in accordance with the Constitution,
Talk about that.
Those numbers would be markedly different.
It would be. And so the way that, and I'm specifically referring to evidence-based Wyoming here. So it is how often you vote with the Republican majority versus how often you vote with the Democrat majority. So here's what Gail Simmons says, quote, an old observation holds that England and America are two nations separated by a common language. Something similar is happening inside the Wyoming Republican Party. Wyoming Republicans still use the same words: liberty, limited government, local control, accountability, Republican. The problem isn't the vocabulary. The problem is the meaning underneath it. Last week, I compared the Wyoming Republican Party platforms of 1994 and 2026. Both were conservative. Okay, so we have a problem with words here because I'm sure the word conservative means something entirely different to me than it does to Gail Simmons. Both used words familiar to Wyoming Republicans, but the difference was hard to miss. The 94 platform sounded like a party preparing to govern Wyoming. The 2026 platform sounded like a party defining who counts as Republican. So the platform we have right now, the Wyoming Republican Party platform,
which was adopted unanimously several years ago and has never been changed.
Yes, actually, it was around 2000, and I'm probably going to get the dates wrong, but it was somewhere around 2020, 2018.
It was 2020. We were during COVID, and we did the thing.
The horrendous meeting on Zoom. That was fun. Anyway, so the Republican Party platform, as it exists right now, has largely been unchanged since 2019, 2020. It's the same thing. Now, there have been some minor tweaks here and there, but there's been no extra planks added to it. We've not removed any giant planks off of it. In no way did the Republican Party platform change from 2020. So go ahead and cue up the Gail Simmons soundbite. Just hold on just a second. So the very first interview that I did on Cowboy State Politics was December 6th of 2020, and it was with Gail Simmons. And so this was right after the 2020 convention, in December, so a couple months after. Here's what she said about the platform. Listen.
We absolutely agree on, for example, the platform.
Oh.
So I'm always kind of perplexed. For example, in your podcast, when you said that we don't support Republican values.
She doesn't.
To me, those are reflected in the platform. And I don't know anybody that I've associated with as a part of Republican, Frontier Republicans, that don't support the platform. And in fact, two of the members were on the platform committee.
What? Hold on a minute. So Gail Simmons' group, the Frontier Republicans, helped write the Republican Party platform, the same one that has remained unchanged since 2020. Now, I thought that, let's see if we can find it here, but the difference is hard to miss. The 94 platform sounded like a party preparing to govern. The 2026 platform sounded like a party defining who counts as Republican. In other words, Gail Simmons and her pals in the Frontier Republicans helped write the current party platform, and it really hasn't changed since 2020 when it was written. She goes on, the shift explains a great deal about why so many Republicans now talk past each other. Longtime Wyoming Republicans often see themselves as the Republican base. They register Republican. They vote in the primaries. They support candidates. They believe in property rights, low taxes, gun rights, local control, natural resource, family work, blah, 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 blah. They don't see themselves as moderates. They see themselves as practical conservatives. You notice how the words keep shifting around in this thing. Conservative, Republican, moderate, conservative. And it continues to change throughout the whole piece. The reason for that is Gail Simmons knows that these words actually do have a meaning, and she's trying to contort her very liberal view of the Republican Party into how it exists today. And she completely glosses over the whole point that she helped write the platform.
Making another observation from where I sit over here.
Yes.
We rewrote that platform. The reason we did is the platform before it was many pages long.
It was like 54 pages.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And the more you speak, the more issues you're going to have. So you try to, the same half as long, get it down to where you're concise and every word matters. And that's what we did. We worked very hard to do that. And yeah, a couple of the Frontier Republican people were there.
Yeah,
and
Doug
it was
Campbell,
voted in unanimously, as verified by your old soundbite. But then something else happened to it, is it was carried forward to National Party.
Yep.
And the National Party started to look at that saying, that's good.
Yeah.
And they started adopting it in various places. And this thing over the last 6 years or so has spread not just in Wyoming, where there was a few people that supposedly took a hold of the party and twisted it, but it's going on all over the country.
So let me tell you what happens at the Republican convention. Well, let's go back to 2022, or 2024, rather. So there is a platform committee where you can propose different bylaw changes, and actually you can go all the way back to 2022. And, you talk about those for a little bit, and what happens is somebody makes a motion to say, you know what, I think what we have is good. Let's just vote on it. And so they did. And then in 2024, somebody made a motion to say, I think what we have here is just fine. Let's vote on it. And they did. And in 2026, a couple of people had some things they might want to tweak, and those got voted down, and somebody made a motion to say, no, what we have is good. Yeah. Let's vote on it. And so they did.
The very preamble of the thing talks about timeless truths.
Yes.
And if, in fact, we were correct, and those are timeless truths, they're not going to change.
Gail Simmons continues. The current party structure majority also sees itself as conservative, but from a different starting point. They see themselves as the people who showed up when others stayed home. They believe the Republican label needs defending. They view platforms, bylaws, resolutions, county committees, and conventions as tools for party accountability. Should they not be? Should you not have accountability in politics? That's the one thing that's lacking. Well, I shouldn't say it's lacking, but that we need more of. That we all should be held accountable for the things that we do and the way that we vote. That's one of the whole reasons why the party exists. There are two, actually, to get Republicans elected and to hold Republicans accountable. That's it.
And then when certain Republicans around the state go and evaluate how people vote and whatever means they use, they put it into a website, whether it be WyoRhino or WyoVote or any one of a number of them, they virtually all point the same way. And then, well, except for a couple of special ones.
Yeah, they're special.
Kind of concocted.
For many longtime Wyoming Republicans, liberty means being left alone. It means owning your own property, running your own business, raising your family, worshiping as you choose, and trusting local government. Okay, so that last one in there, why should you ever trust the government? You should never do that.
That is the toxic one.
Yep. And again,
that's the turd in the punch bowl right there.
Yes. Well, and again, the language keeps shifting in here because Gail Simmons knows that what she's saying is bullcrap, and she's trying to manipulate words to convince you of something that's just not true. Both say liberty, but they aren't always talking about the same thing. Take local control. For many Wyoming Republicans, local control means county clerks, school boards, town councils, county commissioners, and local voters making decisions close to home. It means people in Sheridan, Grable, Torrington, Kemmerer, and Lusk know their own communities better than distant officials do. For party structure activists, and this is what she's calling the current Republican Party, party structure activists, local control often means precinct people, county parties, delegates, and party officers exercising authority inside the Republican structure, ultimately to bend the local board officials to the party's dogma. What the hell does that mean? Essentially, what Gail is trying to say is that those folks inside the Republican Party are trying to hold each other accountable and make sure that we get solid conservatives elected. And the way that we do that is make sure that if you're a Republican, you are who you say you are. Gail, the Supreme Court, just issued a decision on that. But of course, Gail, the person that's likes to talk about facts and figures and numbers, would pay no attention to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, after another page and a half of drivel, she ends it this way. And there's several sentences here, but let me just read this to you. So voting chooses candidates. Party positions shape party tenets, which its stalwarts now brandish as a litmus test, as it should be. If you're not a Republican and you're a Democrat, you should register as a Democrat. To argue anything else is to say that you want Democrats controlling the Republican Party. The 1994 platform recognized room for disagreement on hard issues. It reflected a party broad enough to debate and confident enough to govern. This is a call for Republicans who still believe in broad, practical Wyoming conservatism, there's that word again, to act like the party belongs to them too. If you want a party grounded in Wyoming communities, local judgment, and competent government and real conservative values, take the seat, show up, vote inside the party structure. The people who define the party are the people who file, attend, and stay. File for precinct before May 29th. It would make more sense, and we could believe you, Gail, if you weren't a 100% hypocrite. Gail Simmons filed to run for a precinct seat in Sheridan County, precinct 16-1, and then withdrew her name. Show it to him, Ken, if you would, please. Put my screen up there. Oh, there it is. Withdrawal 5/21/2026. So, Gail, stop being a hypocrite. Stop messing around with language. And stop trying to move your liberal policies into the Republican Party. And for the love of God, quit writing for the cow pie and do us all a favor. Another group of people that don't understand reality is the turkey vulture. Secretary Gray calls for 15 more election reform bills this year. Now, the first 7 paragraphs of it discuss how I don't know, maybe the right word, how irritating Chuck Gray can be, how taxing he can be for the Corporations Committee. Why is it that the Corporations Committee has to discuss election-related bills? Why is it? Because it's their job. That's what they do.
Yeah, corporations and elections.
Corporations, elections, and political subdivisions. So why then would Secretary of State Chuck Gray ask for 15 more bills? Because that's his job. He's the Secretary of State. It's his job to make sure that we have secure elections. And, the way our system works is we elect the person that we think is going to do the best job at the Secretary of State. And Chuck Gray's been very, very clear through, his entire political career about what his priorities are. And one of those is making sure that our elections are as solid as they can be. From the turkey vulture. Over the past 4 years, the Wyoming legislature has considered nearly 100 election-related pieces of legislation. While the majority of those bills have failed, including ones considered multiple times, Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray came before lawmakers to advocate for 15 more to be considered. 15 more bills. Why? How dare he? Why in God's name does he think that he can do that? because that's his job. The Joint Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee met for a second consecutive day in Lander, this time to discuss election reform bills. Senator Nancy Case, Cale Case of Lander. By the way, the reason why I call him Nancy Case is not years ago, but he has always been the foremost proponent of Medicaid expansion. And I think that he has, by my count anyway, I think that he has tried to push a Medicaid expansion bill and or amendment and or just trying to get it through at least 17 times. And the reason why he got the name Nancy Case is he in one committee meeting, he said the very same thing as Nancy Pelosi, in which she said, we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. And my sound bites are all messed up here, Ken. Everybody remembers that one. We have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. Well, Cale Case, in a committee meeting, he said, it's a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal, but we can't even start to figure it out until we pass that bill. That's why he's got the name Nancy Case. So, Senator Nancy Case expressed concern about continuing to work failed legislation and increase the workload on county clerks in an election year. Quote, I'm not enthusiastic, but I'm trying to find a way that the good members that do want to support these bills can express themselves, as if filing pieces of legislation is expressing yourself. No, that's trying to solve a problem, which is why we elect people to the state legislature. It's not to express themselves, Nancy. 15 bills is going to be an enormous workload, and it's going to be an enormous burden on our public during an election year. And it will sow confusion in the process. The problem is, of course, that the legislature is not in session until next January. And so any election reform bill that the Corporations Committee considers now is not going to have an effect until after the election. And so when Case says, you're going to increase the workload on county clerks, how? How exactly is that going to happen? Because for one of Chuck Gray's bills to take effect, it has to go through the legislature and be signed by the governor, which, again, doesn't happen until next year. The 15 bills discussed include 9 previously committee-sponsored bills, most of which were killed by the Wyoming Senate. And the Senate is where good conservative bills go to die. While Case's sentiment was shared by some lawmakers on the committee and those who offered public comment, others maintained that it was essential to continue to push for election reform. The 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, took over 40 years of repeated attempts. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was tried in Congress in 1957 and 1960, and I can go on. Representative Ann Lucas added that the measures under consideration were primarily preventative. The point here is that you have two competing bodies, the House and the Senate. The Senate is run by a bunch of redcoats like Nancy Case. The House right now is being run by conservatives. And so when the House passes a bill that makes its way over to the Senate, it almost always meets an immediate end, especially when it comes to election-related reforms, simply because the liberals over in the Senate, the liberal Republicans, that is, the last thing that they want is to have a bill that tightens up our election system. Why is that? Well, maybe they might benefit from, I don't know, maybe a little election shenanigans, perhaps. Maybe at one time, they may have had a vote or two that didn't get counted. I don't know. I'm just conjecturing here, but that's the only reason why you wouldn't want election reforms. I mean, who doesn't want an election that tells us exactly how people vote? Well, I'll tell you who. Liberals like Nancy Case. Ken, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking.
Just thinking? Did it hurt?
Not today.
Not today. Sometimes, though. All right. So let's take a break, and we'll continue with the program when we come back. know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell.
Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. With 60,000 views every month on this program, I guarantee you, my friends, if you're not on this program, you're probably not a conservative. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, sometimes we can't get it scheduled. But the truth is, if you don't hear your candidate on this program, you need to ask them why. Generally speaking, I don't say no to an interview. It depends on who it is, right? I mean, if there's somebody that really, really, really irritates me, I probably wouldn't. But I have to say that even if Gail called me and said, hey, David, I'd like to come on your program, I would probably say yes.
You'd have to do it somewhere else.
Now, well, I don't know about that. Okay, maybe we wouldn't want her knowing where the studio is.
Yeah, we don't want her down here.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it remotely. But the truth is, if your candidate is not on this program, you need to ask them why, because there's definitely a reason. Before the break, we were talking about this whole Nancy Case soundbite that we couldn't find. First, everybody remembers this.
We're very, you've heard about the controversies within the bill, the process about the bill, one of the items, but I don't know if you have heard that it is a legislation for the future. Not just about health care for America, but about a healthier America.
Yeah.
Where preventive care is not something that you have to pay a deductible for or out of pocket. That prevention's about diet, not diabetes.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very exciting. But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Which sounds
away from the fog of the controversy.
Which sounds suspiciously like this.
This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even start to figure it out until we pass this bill.
That's why I call him Nancy Case. Because, well, I mean, you can do the math on that one, but I mean, all of these nicknames I have for people, they earned them. And if you know anything about nicknames, once you earn a nickname, it is really hard to get rid of, like Nancy Case or Slithers or Slithers. Do you have the Nethercutt soundbite, Ken? Yeah, I'm sure there's about 50 of them in there. Maybe I've got it. I don't know. But anyway, once you get a nickname, it's pretty hard to get rid of. Here it is. I've got it. Listen to this one.
Senator French, that's currently the law now. In order to attend public school, you must be immunized. But your children don't have to attend public school. It's all a choice.
Oh, that is so Senator
And
Slithers.
if you've ever been around her, yeah, that is such a condescending.
You know, every time I hear that, what I think of is the snake in the Jungle Book. Trust in me. Here's another soundbite for you. Check this one out.
I'm really more of a zombie at this point.
Ooh, yeah. So anyway, that's why she has the name Slithers, just because, I mean, it's what else, man? When she gives you the willies, it's you have to be immunized.
All of us legislators represent all of the people of Wyoming. All of them.
All of them. Uh-huh. That one, that's an oldie but a goodie there. That was from 2021, maybe? 2022?
That brings up a whole nother discussion, which we don't have to get into right now.
But
there's that philosophical thing, you hear people that are running to get in now and they say, I just want to listen. Well, if you listen to your constituents, you will hear a voice on every side of every issue.
Yes.
And so when
Which
you say
by
that,
the way, you should listen to your constituents.
Yes, you should. And you have a pulse on there. But if you say, basically, I'm going to take a poll every time I have to make a decision, number one, it's not humanly, physically possible. Number two, it's not what a republic is designed to do.
That's not how our system was designed.
Yeah, a republic is basically folks saying, I don't have time to research every one of these bills and all the details in there. So I'm going to trust your judgment. You're somebody who sees things similar to the way that I do. I'm going to send you down there and you do the best you can to represent me.
Yes. And if we don't like you, we vote you out.
It is completely impossible for someone to represent all of the people because everything.
Okay, well, let's talk about this for a minute.
Yeah.
So you're running for office.
Yep.
Right. And I helped you with your website, so I know what's on there. So let's not use yours as an example. But you have some candidates in the race that on their website there's a poll or two, and I don't really have a problem with that. Maybe there's a topic that you haven't had a chance to talk to your constituents about. Maybe you don't know a lot about it. I mean, do you have any problems with polls, like a candidate running a poll on a particular issue?
I have never seen a poll by a candidate in Wyoming. Now, I know that there are some. I know that, for example, Bill Allemand ran one on a particular issue, but it wasn't necessarily campaign related. I know that the Freedom Caucus and
I was just going to ask
like
you about
that,
this.
yeah, they have put up money for a poll to see what's on people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
What are your top issues, that sort of thing. But I haven't seen a lot of in just elections. I haven't seen a lot of polling data. People say, well, how do you think it's going? I don't know.
Well, and here's so I think that's a different issue. I think what I was driving at was you have this slate of issues over here, whether it's election integrity or guns or, abortion or, the What is a Woman Act or whatever. I mean, just pick whatever issue. I don't necessarily have a problem with a candidate trying to figure out where his constituency is on a particular issue. I mean, that's kind of what the Freedom Caucus did. Well, it is exactly what the Freedom Caucus did before they passed the 5 and dime plan. Where are Wyoming voters at? What are your top 5 concerns? And we'll go after them. And that's exactly what they did. But is that any different than a candidate saying, hey, here's a couple polls. Tell me what you think of those. I don't see a difference between that. Okay, so then the next question then is the Julie Jarvis example, where I'm going to run a poll on all of these different issues, and then I'm going to vote accordingly. That is not how our system was set up. And I think I got to draw a little distinction, or a little bright line here, because in trying to figure out where your constituents are at, I don't have a problem with that. but you find out what their opinions are. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, and then you go down to Cheyenne or Congress for that matter, and you vote. But you're not taking a poll on how should I vote on this particular issue, yes or no.
The problem is you're the one with the information. That's what I was talking about. You go down there, you get the information, and then you make that decision, because not every person sitting in every corner has the time to go through and read every bill and do all that.
It's really hard.
Physically impossible.
Yeah, I don't think you could.
So that's what got me into trouble with the very first. A lot of people got their panties in a wad. That was the Sheridan Ladies Group, the LAC. They saw a bill and they took it at face value, and they wrote letter after letter saying, say no on this one. Well, they didn't actually have all the facts. When you had all of the facts, you knew it was a different issue.
Well, so and I think first, in most districts, you have to work. I don't think that you could talk to all 10,000 of your constituents. I mean, I really don't think that you could do that. You could go door to door on a great number of them, because you got to figure 10,000 divided by 4. So, you're what? 2,500 houses you gotta knock on.
Yeah, you knock on a bunch of houses, and that in effect is like being a poll.
Yeah.
What's on your mind, and generally what you hear are national issues that you can't do anything about, because that's where people's minds are.
Well, and so, you go knock on a whole bunch of doors, and invariably you're going to find an issue that maybe personally you don't think one way or another on. What was that? That was an interesting noise. Anyway, but maybe you don't have an opinion one way or another on a particular issue, but the bill is still going to come up. And what you do is you use your best judgment, right? Because you certainly can't call a whole bunch of people and say, hey, this bill came up, I don't know how to vote on it. That's just not going to work. And even though Julie Jarvis says that she runs a poll on all this, I don't believe that it's possible to get enough real-time data to do what she told her constituents she would do.
Well, you'll get topics all the time that are something you've never even thought about.
Right.
And a lot of them, when they first hit the ground, you think, well, that'd be good. One example I can think of is they wanted to reintroduce some bighorn sheep into a particular area. Well, that sounds ideal. It'd be great if we had more bighorn sheep in Wyoming. But
I've still never seen one, by the way.
It sucks to be you.
It does. It does.
You're not alone. But anyway, so my initial reaction to that was, well, yeah. Well, then as I began to understand more about it, and I began to talk to some of the ranchers and livestock owners in the area and realize some of the other issues that brought into play, I learned that my initial reaction probably wasn't the way that it should be. And it takes time to research those things. Corner crossings, that's another huge...
That's a pretty hot button.
Yeah, that is a very complex issue, frankly, where you have the rights of the landowner, and we talk about, freedom is based on individual rights and the ability to own property and determine that, versus the rights of the public. And both sides are right, but you've got to come to a conclusion.
Over the weekend, this is a slight diversion here, but you mentioned private property, made me think of this. So in our family, we have a pretty diverse group of folks. So my mother works in the school system. My sister, she's a banker, and she's also involved. She's on several different boards in where she lives. My brother-in-law is a police deputy, and my dad is essentially a biologist. And so we got to talking about the proper role of government. So when you boil it all down, the proper role of government is to protect individual rights, period. And so how do we do that as a city or a county or as the state? Well, we pass legislation that protects those rights, whatever it may be, elections or, your freedom of speech, or perhaps it's a gun bill. But those are all the big ticket items. So the question came up, about corner crossing. Because we own a really beautiful piece of property in the Bighorn Mountains, and thankfully our piece is all landlocked by private land, so we don't have to worry about the any public land really close. There is a state section that's not too far away, but it doesn't conjoin our property. And so the question was, does private property only, and if we're talking about land, does it only apply, does that principle of private property only apply to the physical land that you stand on? Or does it apply, is there some airspace above it? And, one of the people in the group said, well, no, I don't think that it does, because you can't own the air. And my argument was, what about a privacy fence? Why are privacy fences legal? Well, first, you can build a fence on your own property. But second, it prevents the public from seeing what's happening in the airspace above the chunk of property that you own. So theoretically, you do own that airspace.
What if somebody's flying a drone over there about your window height?
Good
what
question.
What if they're harassing your livestock?
Mm-hmm.
And their excuse is, well, we're scouting for elk, whatever. What if they're harassing the elk?
Sure, that's a major crime.
Yeah, I mean there are many factors that come into this, and another one of them is just technologically. How do you know exactly where you are?
You can't.
It's within about 10 meters, probably.
Give or take.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of instances where the public has gone in and cut fences and left trash laying around. You're supposed to only do it on foot. That's what it says.
That's what it says.
But somebody doesn't really understand the law, so they go in and make themselves a gate and run four-wheelers across there. It's just on and on and on and on. Many issues.
Well, yeah, it's a really complicated issue. And as it relates to that, on Thursday, we're going to talk to a guy. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen Thursday. But there was a case in Johnson County where some hunters flew a helicopter into a piece of public land. I think it was BLM, but it was all landlocked by private land. And so flew a helicopter in and landed in the chunk of public property. And a lot of other things happened. I won't spoil the story for you. But one of the reasons why I want to have him on the show is, one, for the story about all the events that happened after that, or surrounding it, not after. But second, to talk about this idea of public lands. That, where is the one question I'm going to ask him? His name is David. He actually writes for Guns and Ammo, or he's an editor for Guns and Ammo magazine. But anyway, one question is, where is the bright line between just accessing a piece of property and harassing wildlife? Because if you fly a helicopter into any chunk of property and there's some wildlife around, you cannot keep a helicopter quiet. And so one way or another, you're going to chase wildlife around. And secondly, what about the rancher that leases that chunk of property that has livestock on it? That's his private property.
If you lease a house, people just can't come visit it because it's on public land.
Right.
What does that mean?
So this is a much more complicated issue than just saying, well, I can hop over the corner post. And even if you do know where the corner post is, you don't know where you physically are around it.
Well, that kind of brings a whole other thing, is fences don't necessarily follow property lines.
Most of the time they don't.
Yeah, they'll be on a ridge line or someplace where they're most capable of doing their job.
It's called a fence of convenience.
Yes. And so those are there all over the place. And just because there's a fence line doesn't mean that's the property line. You don't know necessarily where you're at with most of the consumer available. Another factor, just throwing all these things out there, what happens to a game warden? He ends up having to be judge, jury, executor.
Well, hopefully not.
all in one shot. There's just a lot of things that go into play.
I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's not.
And so getting back to what you're talking about, the average person on the street hasn't had time to interview and talk to all of these different concerns and all these different players. That's what you pay us to do. And then you have to trust us to make a decision.
Well, yeah, and it goes back to our original topic here. I'm sure that there are a number of people in the Wyoming legislature that are not hunters, that's not one of the things that they like to do. And so, but still, they have to vote on these issues. And so how do you do that? Well, you listen to the arguments, and you say, okay, well, I think I'm persuaded this way rather than this way. And that's how our system works. And if your constituents don't like how they're being represented, then they vote you out. But this whole idea of legislating on a survey, I don't think it's possible. And secondly, what about when public sentiment changes? Do you have to run another poll? I mean, often the public is not given all of the information. And we discussed the media we always talk about the media on this show. Pretty much you never get the full picture of whatever topic it is. And so unless you do your own research, you may think one way. You get down to Cheyenne and you're presented with a whole bunch of other information that completely changes your point of view. So, I mean, our system was never set up to run as a democracy. And this is the point. We live in a representative republic, not a democracy. A democracy is mob rule. And if you are voting based upon a survey, I think you're doing a real disservice to our entire system. So anyway, I mean, I think it's going to be a fascinating interview next week. And and on Friday we've got Jimmy Skovgaard. He's running for the U.S. Senate. So we're going to talk to him on Friday.
This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even start to figure it out.
I just love
until
that
we
sound.
pass
I had to
this bill.
listen. I had to listen to it again. All right, moving on. UFO Insider claims the U.S. has bodies of 4 different alien species from downed spacecraft in government custody. New claims that the United States has recovered remains of 4 separate species of alien life are sending shockwaves through the UFO disclosure movement, further drumming up conversations surrounding the government's knowledge of otherworldly life. Dr. Hal Puthoff, a CIA-funded researcher and former Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program advisor, announced the new revelation while appearing at a UFO roundtable on Steve Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO podcast, alongside of the Age of Disclosure director Dan Farah this week. Quote,
Maybe through all this we'll find out where Gail Simmons did come from.
Well, it certainly wasn't from Conservativeville. Quote, given the level of quality of their technology, if they didn't want to be seen, we wouldn't be seeing them, Puthoff said on the podcast. So it seems like, I would say, there's evidence that for whatever reason, they're wanting to be seen. Now, there is no question that there have been some crazy videos of flying craft that we really can't explain. Now, I personally have not seen one of those things. I've not seen a UFO. Ken, you've seen one?
I have.
Really? Can you explain what you saw?
No, because I don't know what it was, and I don't know how to explain it.
No, because it's classified.
Yeah. I noticed something shiny in the sky and looked up, and it was not moving, which is kind of weird. I thought, well, maybe it's, a plane flying directly at me. And I watched it for a couple of minutes. That was kind of weird, and trying to get some idea how big it actually was. It's hard to tell when it's out there, how far away it is. And all of a sudden, it just took off at a right angle. If it was flying at me, it took off at a right angle because it went from what appeared to be a dead standstill to a streak.
Weird.
And was gone in a couple of seconds. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that I don't know if there's, I'm sure that the universe is so big that if we are the only people in it or the only life in the universe, it's a heck of a waste of space. I
always think of Jesus saying, I have other sheep which are not of this fold. Maybe that's what he meant.
Maybe so. I don't know. But there have been a lot of disclosures recently. Trump has declassified a lot of this information. And what fascinates me, Ken, is with all of these disclosures, you would think that would be like 3-inch headlines on, in every paper in America. Aliens exist, evidence of aliens, but it's not. It's really been, kind of the same old thing that, you make fun of the people that think that they've been abducted by aliens and they're just some crackpot that, maybe he's off his meds or something. But there are some credible people that are talking about this. And I've got a video from Fox News And it's Jesse Waters interviewing this Hal Puthoff guy, the former CIA researcher. So go ahead and play the video UFO interview for me. Maybe.
As the director and producer of The Age of Disclosure, the film that started to shake loose the UFO files. All right, Dan, what have you heard about these different breeds of alien life?
Now watch the videos.
Look, a number of the people I interviewed in my film, senior intelligence officials, went on the record saying that there have been dozens of crashed craft of non-human origin over the years, and elements of our government have recovered those crashes, and they've gotten out of that technology of non-human origin, and in some cases, non-human bodies that were on these craft. A number of the people in my film go on the record saying that the bodies were not all the same type, meaning there were multiple species.
Were the bodies alive or were they dead?
The people in my film talked about events where they were dead bodies, they were deceased bodies.
Okay, and
yeah,
there's a lot of speculation about the amount of UFO information we've been given on this first tranche. We expected more. We know there is more. Why do you think people inside the government are fighting so hard to release more?
Yeah, so the president gave his directive in middle of February, essentially instructing all federal agencies to declassify evidence of non-human intelligent life and UAP. What happened after that is the White House had to go get that evidence out of the hands of all these federal agencies, and they all, for the most part, pushed back. The people who have gatekept this information for 80 years, they don't want to share it. You know, they've gotten a lot of power and control over the years, and it's just frankly not human nature for people to want to give up power and control. So there's a tug of war happening behind the scenes. There are a number of other reasons guiding their desire to keep this secret, including a general belief that the public can't handle the truth. I would argue the public can handle the truth. I think my film shows that. People aren't watching it and jumping out of windows. They're curious and they want to learn more. There's also a general feeling that, a concern that they can't tell the American public what they know and don't know without also telling our adversaries and giving them some sort of advantage. But I think that that's not really accurate. I think our adversaries know we're not alone in the universe. They know we've been recovering craft of non-human technology, non-human origin.
That's
saying it out loud wouldn't give them any new information.
Is there
Those base
also,
facts can be shared.
like, the credibility factor? You know, this is a government that's lied to us about a lot of things for a lot of years, and this was one of the big ones. You were called crazy if you even suggested anything like this. And now they're releasing files admitting that it was actually real. Are they trying to protect themselves, their own credibility?
Yeah, there's certainly an element of that. I mean, no one wants to take accountability. You know, a lot of people's lives were ruined over the years covering this up. A lot of careers were ruined. And, you know, one of the other concerns people who involved in keeping the secret have is the fact that they're worried about coming forward, sharing evidence they have, and then being punished for it, being treated like criminals.
All right.
You know, and
so my question is, why is it that we can't just lay all the evidence bare and let the public judge it for what they see? And I think that there's a number of reasons why a lot of this stuff has been kept secret. And if indeed a craft was, and I don't even know if this is true, but if a craft was recovered, no doubt there was technology on there that, you know, was beyond our capability. So that may be a reason. I don't buy the whole that the people can't handle the truth. I don't think that. I kind of side with this guy.
All the things I've discovered, but not for much longer. Because too many others know what's happening out there. And no government agency has jurisdiction over the truth.
It's one of my favorite shows. I may have to start at the beginning and just watch them all again. But I don't know, Ken. I mean, if there aren't aliens out there, then I think it's an awful waste of space.
It's interesting. I'm going to pop this one up here. Just a comment. from one of our followers.
Oh, yeah, okay. No such thing as aliens like green men. Bible doesn't support it. Okay? What do you think, Mr. Pastor?
I am a bit of a Bible scholar.
Just a little bit.
Donnie, I'd love to sit down with you sometime and challenge that.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I have sheep that are not of this fold. I don't know what that means. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible that I don't know what it means.
Most of what the Bible was is this is what you need to know.
Fair enough.
And there are a whole lot of things we don't know about the Nephilim, for example, and it goes on and on. There are all kinds of mysteries that are out there that weren't essential for us to understand how to be saved.
And for me, there's several references that, we don't understand the mind of God. And I don't think that's possible for us to do. I mean, we're limited beings, imperfect limited beings. And so there's a lot of things in this universe that we probably, definitely that we haven't seen. And second, that we probably don't understand.
Every day I see or read articles that basically say this latest archaeological evidence or this latest fossil evidence completely rewrites what we thought we knew.
Yeah.
We see that constantly.
I mean, and again, it's, I see this a lot too, living in the time that we are with AI. There are some folks, some media outlets, tech blogs that claim that with AI, we will know all the, everything that is knowable. I don't think that that's true. I think that we can theorize. I think we can solve math problems that we never could before. But I don't think that we can know with certainty that there's some other creature living on some other planet.
So we keep having this discussion about AI and the Tower of Babel.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed that, I don't know whether the Pope listens to us or not, but he actually came out over the last couple of days and suggested exactly the same thing. And the other thing that came out recently was the idea, the desire to put these data centers in space where they're easy to cool.
Yeah. No, I mean,
who'd have thunk?
I think that might be a great idea. Let's go ahead and take our third break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the show. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday, right after Memorial Day weekend. I went by the lake, Lake DeSmet, and I don't know, did they do the fishing derby this year? I didn't even pay any attention. You know, when I was growing up, we had Alabams, and, the lead up to Memorial Day weekend was always a zoo. And I mean, we were working, from 6 a.m. until 9 and 10 o'clock at night. But usually on Memorial Day weekend, we'd go to the cabin and get away from the rat race that was down here. So I didn't even notice if there was a fishing derby. If you went, go ahead and hit me up in the comments and let me know if there was a fishing derby at all. One item that we haven't talked a lot about is what's been going on over with Iran. What is happening over there? And, I saw on Fox News this morning that there's another peace proposal and there were some strikes. I'm assuming they were retaliatory strikes. It's really hard to craft a ceasefire when the person you're negotiating with is still shooting at you. I mean, that seems to be kind of a non-starter for me.
I think part of it is when you don't even know who's in control.
Yeah, I don't even think you know who's...
They may be making a deal with someone thinking it's a good faith, and then somebody else... It's chaos over there.
I wish we just, decimate the regime that's in there, be done with it, and, do the same thing we did in Venezuela. All right, we'll help you set things up, and, we'll do away with this crazy, autocratic government that you have that wants to kill off the entire world. But what's going on in Congress is a little bit easier to put a bead on. The Democrats and liberals, they want the United States out of the Middle East, period. And, of course, they want us to pull out of Iran. One Democrat representative, her last name is Dean, she says it's utter nonsense to say that there's been a war with Iran for 47 years. I think it's absolutely the truth that Iran has been at war with the United States for 47 years, repeatedly. The Ayatollah and their various presidents, whether it's Ahmadinejad or this new guy, have repeatedly said that we're the great Satan, Israel is the little Satan. Your chants in the streets from all the people they've threatened to if you don't chant with us, we're going to put a bullet in your head. Death to America, death to Israel. At some point, you have to take those people seriously. And when the country is the chief sponsor of terror in the world, that's pretty easy math for me to say, while they haven't been able to perpetrate a full-scale war against the United States, they have been at war with us since the Marine barracks and, since the taking over of the embassy, since the USS Cole. I mean, there have been so many things that the nation of Iran has done to the United States. I mean, they are responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans in one way or another, whether it's a bombing here or there. But this Democrat representative says that it's utter nonsense. On Monday's broadcast of CNN News Central, Madeleine Dean argued that it's utter nonsense to argue that there's been a war between the U.S. and Iran for 47 years, and that the war is, quote, something that the president went into with Mr. Netanyahu's ambitions at the forefront, not America's. Go ahead and play the video, no war for 47 years.
I would say, and this is from colleagues I speak to either on the floor or in committee, they are well aware of the lost ground underneath them. They are well aware that they're about to lose the midterms. I think they're just trying to hold tight. Some have said that, just trying to hold on to get through the midterms. And I know that they are troubled by this war, even as they sometimes proclaim, oh, we've been at war for 47 years. What utter nonsense. This is a very dangerous making. This is something that the president went into with Mr. Netanyahu's ambitions at the forefront, not America's. And now, sadly, the president has been boxed in. So I pray for this framework of a deal that will actually open the strait, stop the conflict, bring our military safely home, and of course, make sure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
You mentioned the midterms.
With the IRGC in control of Iran, our soldiers are never safe. And it's just a matter of their capability to conduct attacks. That's the only reason why we haven't seen more of them. That Iran has been able to be pretty influential among, around the region. They're constantly attacking Israel, funding Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis, and maybe not the Houthis, but like a whole bunch of other terrorist organizations. So they're pretty influential in the region, and the only reason why I don't think that we've seen, a missile come headed for the continental U.S. is they don't have the capability to do that. And if they had the capability to do that, I think definitely they would absolutely try it. Or what would happen if they got their hands on a nuclear weapon? I think first they would turn Israel into a piece of glass, and then if they had a second one, they'd figure out how to detonate it in the United States. I don't think that they've made any bones about that. And so to argue that, oh, no, we haven't been at war for 47 years, that's utter nonsense. Well, I think that's just her political blindness talking. And you'll notice that they began the conversation talking about the midterms. And for Democrats, it is all about maintaining power. That's the only thing that Democrats are interested in. And so any issue, whether it's the war in Iran or the economy or whatever, you can just fill in the blank, they will figure out how to use that for political power. And I mean, that's the only thing that those folks are even interested in. And we have been at war for a really long time, and until we take out the mullahs in Iran, I think it's just going to continue. I don't think there's any question about that. My favorite subject, things that go boom, and I won't hit the boom soundbite because we'll probably, if you haven't noticed, we've been playing around with the audio on today's program, so we'll get it ironed out. But the things that go boom soundbite is a little loud. This one is also from Breitbart News. Virginia prosecutor, Marine veteran, says he will not enforce the state's unconstitutional AR-15 ban. And if you didn't know, the state of Virginia and the governor of Virginia, Spanberger, just signed an expansive ban on AR platform weapons and on several other semi-automatic handguns. Here's what the piece says. Virginia prosecutor and U.S. Marine veteran Ryan McCaffrey is making clear that he will not enforce the assault weapons ban that Governor Abigail Spanberger signed into law. Fox News reported that he said that the Commonwealth attorney for Spotsylvania County, he sent a letter to his county sheriff to tell him his position that the ban is unconstitutional and cannot be legally enforced. He also noted, quote, "Our founders were careful to make sure when they drafted our founding document that the ultimate right of the people was preserved to defend themselves and to defend their community. So, the linchpin of the constitutional analysis is going to be, does this instrument have the reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia?" Breitbart News reported that Spanberger signed the ban on wildly popular semi-automatic rifles, certain shotguns in mid-May. So this doesn't really have anything to do with AR platform weapons. It has to do with guns, period. End of sentence. And so Spanberger or any Democrat that's in power, while they may not be able to say, well, we're just going to ban, all rifles, they will take a piece at a time. It's what the Democrats are masters at incrementalism. And so if in Virginia they can pass a ban on so-called assault weapons, then they can pass a ban on semi-automatic shotguns or semi-automatic pistols or any of them. I mean, it's important to understand where the Democrats are at. While the Democrats in Wyoming would be stupid and not really want to get elected for them to say, oh, yeah, we're going to get rid of AR-style weapons. Make no mistake, that absolutely is their goal. I'm sure if we dug through the Democrat platform, we would probably find that in there. But the reason why it's not mentioned by Democrat candidates in Wyoming is they know that they already have a long shot to get elected. So why would you add, another brick on top of that to dampen your electoral prospects even further? But you shouldn't make any mistake that the Democrats have always been and always will be against your right to defend yourself, your family, and the country from tyranny. And so then the last question is, if the Democrats know that this is a loser of a campaign issue, if they know that they're not going to get elected, if they even breathe that they want to get rid of any sort of firearm, why do they do it? Well, the reason why they want to ban your firearms is because they're about to do something to you that you would shoot them for. That's exactly what that is exactly why they're so intent on getting rid of firearms, because an armed populace cannot be controlled. And if you remove the possibility that you might get shot for trying to take somebody's liberty, well, then you can get the populace to do anything that you want. I mean, it is the ultimate. The Second Amendment is the ultimate safeguard against tyranny. And if that is removed, if you get a governor like Spanberger that says we're going to come take your guns, well, you don't have to think very hard to figure out what step number 2 is. So in this election, make sure that you, and this is why I question just about every candidate I interview about guns. And, again, in Wyoming, you'd be stupid to say, well, I'm not in favor of semi-automatic rifles, even if they are, because if they do come out and sponsor a bill like that, well, they're not going to get elected again. But it's important to get them on the record, and that way we can point out the hypocrisy of what they're doing. Well, we've pretty much burned up all I've got for this Tuesday. It was kind of a light news morning, so we're going to go ahead and sign off for today. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, with another edition of Cowboy State Politics Live. Have a good afternoon, my friends, and we'll see you tomorrow.